This is how I would automate a content agency. I'll be showing you every single step you need to go through to actually build an automated agency. So if you have a content agency or just the agency in general and you're tired of manually running every single step within your agency, then this video will be extremely valuable. So watch until the end to get a really good understanding of how you can actually automate your agency. So let's get straight into it. So this is going to be split into three main sections: the audit, the internal platform side of things, and then the automation. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this guy doing automation at the very end? I mean, the whole video is about automation, right? Well, yes. If we were setting up simple automations, for example, whenever a new lead comes in, add them to your CRM, or I don't know, creating a new Google Drive folder whenever X happens, that will be very, very simple. And there's no need to kind of go through these three stages to actually get to the automation. However, when we're talking about automating an entire agency, we're going to be building out quite complex automations that are all running at the same time doing different things. And in order to do that, the best way is to first get some really, really good frameworks, which is why we're actually taking time to firstly focus on the audit, then an internal platform, and then moving on automation. Because using that method, you'll be able to leverage automation at a much higher level. Oh, by the way, guys, if you want to know who I am, my name's Leo. I'm the CEO and founder of Fluxomate, an operation agency which helps agency owners all over the world set up scale-proof systems. Automation plays a massive part in actually setting up these scale-proof systems that we set up for our partners. And what I'm showing you today is the exact same frameworks that we take our partners through when actually setting up these scale-proof systems. That's a quick one-on-one on who this random guy in the orange hoodie actually is. Let's get back to the video. The first thing we actually need to do is actually audit the agency. Now, when you're trying to set up a scale-proof systems, it's very important you take time to set up the correct foundations for all the work you're going to be carrying out, because everything we're doing in this stage and the next stage is going to reflect in the different automations that we're actually building. The more time you invest in getting this right the first time, the less time you have to invest kind of troubleshooting away through different automations which aren't going to be that valuable. And just to kind of drive in how important this actually is, when they actually build the tallest building in the world, which I'm going to try draw here, but obviously, get your own representation. This is what's meant to be the Burj Khalifa, which as of 2024 is the tallest building in the world. They spent 2 years building a very, very specific part of this building. Can you guess what that was? You guessed it. It was the foundations. So everything that happened under the ground to actually support such a large structure. Now, in this example, we're not building anything nearly as complicated as the Burj Khalifa, so you don't have to worry about that, thankfully enough. But we are going to still spend the first 2 stages working out how we can set up the correct foundations to actually support automations we're going to be building. So, because we're just doing this for automation rather than an entire scale-proof system, we do have a bit of an advantage. So rather than completing an entire audit, we're only doing maybe about 30% of the work. So do keep that in mind as we're going through different things. This works for setting up an automated agency, but automation isn't the only thing that comes into play when setting up a scale-proof agency. The rest of the kind of audit is how you can actually take care of that. But for this video, we're just going to be focusing on automation, which is the 30% right here. Now, to actually do that, I've split it up into 3 different kind of sections that we want to audit within the agency: the sales, the onboarding, and the fulfillment. The sales is basically how we get that lead to convert into a paying customer. The onboarding process is how we get that new lead, this is my attempt to join a lead, into our own ecosystem. And the fulfillment process is how we actually provide the results that we promised in the sales process to the lead to make sure they have a great experience and they can actually stay with us, and we can increase our retention, decrease our churn, different things like that. Now, the reason I kind of split up in these 3 specific sections is because when we have these and a really, really clear understanding of what we're doing in each of these sections, then we can get a really good understanding of our client journey. And that's going to make our life a lot easier when we actually move on to automation. So just to recap, we're going to be splitting this into 3 main sections: the sales section, which is basically the process of us getting the lead into a paying customer; the onboarding section, which is the process of us getting that paying customer within our ecosystem; and then the fulfillment, which is the process of us basically delivering the services to that paying customer to make them happy and hopefully increase our retention so we can make more money. Now, there's 2 main things we want to do in this stage. Firstly, we want to get a current breakdown of everything that we're currently doing, and then we want to go ahead and actually optimize that current breakdown. We'll start off with the current breakdown. Now, usually when a new client comes on for us, we spend a lot of time getting this right, because in all honesty, right, we've had maybe 2 sales calls, but I don't really know who this person is. I mean, obviously I've got a rough understanding of their business. I know I can help them, but I don't really know exactly how they do what they do, the different kind of processes they may have, and different things like that. So for us, this stage is really, really valuable to get a really good understanding of what our partners are doing within their own agencies. But regardless of whether you're working with us or not, I still want you to do this. I still want you to get a current breakdown of everything you're doing, because what we see a lot when we're actually doing this current breakdown, people don't have as clear as a thought as they initially thought they had when it comes to their own operations. And guys, this is why this stage is so important, because it'll make you realize three different things. It'll make you realize the things you don't know. It'll make you realize the things that you're really confident on. And it'll also make you realize the things that you want to improve. Now, the easiest way to do this for yourself without using any sort of outside help is to take a different perspective. So at the moment, you're reading this as an agency owner or maybe an employee for your agency. When you're kind of going this current breakdown, I want you to take the perspective of a client looking in from an outside perspective into your agency and asking different questions. That kind of gives yourself the opportunity to break everything down to its core, which is very, very vital in this step. Let's say you have a complicated process like sales. We're not going to say we're making a sales. We're going to break down the sales process down to its core. How are you getting the leads? How are you qualifying the leads? How are you booking the leads in? How are you nurturing the leads? How are you actually closing the leads? How are you creating a proposal? You get it. That's obviously just an example, and I'll give you one more example to really drive this in a second. But I really want you to break down this massive goal you have, like sales, for example, or like onboarding, and break it down to its core individual steps of what you're currently doing. Like I said, you're going to realize there's a lot of things you don't like about what you're doing, there's a lot of things you like about what you're doing, and there's a lot of things you want to improve, as well as kind of pointing out different things that you don't really know how you do it, which one of the main benefits of actually doing this. Now, I'll give you one more example to really drive this point in. Let's say you're doing something as simple as just making a cup of tea. And this is my kind of tea that we got right here. Are you one, making a tea, or are you boiling water? Are you getting a mug? Are you grabbing a tea bag? Are you mixing the tea bag? And so on and so forth. Now, the reason why this is very, very clear is because it allows you to really understand each and every single step of a process. And I actually got this from my days back in school, specifically in those science lessons when we did different experiments. My science teacher basically made us write these different methods for experiments. And one of the things he said while we were kind of creating different steps of different things we actually had to do for these experiments was describe it as if you're describing to someone who's a complete idiot. So you want to break down every single step that you do. For example, pick up the task by grabbing it by its sides and pour the boiling water into the kettle, different things like that. This is actually a similar process that we take when creating different things like SOPs, but that's a kind of different topic for different videos. So I basically want you to go through every single step of your process from the sales, the onboarding, and your fulfillment process and break it down to its core in terms of everything you do. If you need some extra inspiration, feel free to kind of pause this and read through these questions to give you a better idea. These aren't that in depth, but the main goal that we're trying to achieve by using these questions is to ignite different thoughts in your head. So I'll pay close attention to the sales, the onboarding, and the fulfillment questions. Now, like I said, while you're going through this, you'll realize there's a lot you don't actually know. That's completely normal. This is actually what we're going to be fixing in the next stage. Now that you have a current breakdown of everything you're doing, we can now move on to the optimized version of your processes. Now, in this stage, we're basically taking everything that you've broken down and then optimize it to the next level. Now, the reason we're actually spending time to not only break this down, but also to optimize it is because when we're building an automation, we're kind of setting something in stone. Don't get me wrong, it is very easy to change it later on. However, in my opinion, it's much better if we take some time out to firstly get the systems right in the first place and then automate them, so we don't have to repeat this in the future when the automation is already built. Now, this is also a win because it gives you a chance to kind of optimize the different systems, which is something that you should always be doing on a regular basis anyways. Now, for every single step of the process I kind of talked about today, from sales to onboarding and to also fulfillment, I already have optimized versions of each one of these processes that you can check out in the description. I'll also include one of them in the top right hand corner to get you started. You can use it inspiration. If you want even more inspiration, you can go through these questions. Now, once again, these questions aren't that in detail, but I want you to pay particular attention to the sales questions, the onboarding questions, and the fulfillment questions. The whole purpose of these questions is they're basically trying to ignite different thoughts within your head. So we'll go through an example, right? Just to kind of give you an idea of how you can actually use these questions. We'll start off with sales. If you're kind of reading through this and you don't currently have a way to actually qualify your leads, you'd see this question, are you qualifying leads? And be like, oh, okay, I didn't know I was meant to qualify leads. Let me think of a way within my sales process that I can now implement a system to automatically qualify the leads, kind of like a funnel. And you just rinse and repeat this for every single one of the steps that we have here, all the different questions. Always remember to ask yourself, what if? So when you're kind of setting up these processes and kind of conditional workflows, make sure to always think of all the different possibilities. So for example, what if they don't book an onboarding call? What if they don't respond to my email? Different things like that. Always ask yourself what if for every single step of the process. And using all these questions and the kind of different frameworks I've showed you so far, you'll be able to create an optimized version of your current breakdown, which we're going to use for each step of the way. Now, at the end of this kind of audit stage, you should have something that looks like this. Now, this is an example what we did for a client for fulfillment. Obviously, this is a 10 out of 10 version. I don't expect yours to be nearly as in depth of this, but as long as you have a really good understanding of what you're doing for each of the three processes I talked about from sales, onboarding, and fulfillment, you'll be on your way to actually setting up an automated system for your content agency. Now that we actually finished this audit, it's time we move on to the internal platform. Now, the reason we're doing this once again is because we're setting up quite complex automations that will be running at the same time. So it's much easier to use something like an internal platform to act as a hub for the different automations we're actually building out in the next stage. Now, to actually do this, I personally use what I like to call custom internal platforms. The reason I use these rather than your standard tools like Airtable, ClickUp, Asana, different things like that is because I think using those tools, you can't create your own perfect operating system for your agency. And let me explain. I don't actually think a perfect system exists, at least not one that you can kind of get straight off the bat and just start using within your agency. The word perfect means a lot of different things to different people. For example, for some people, this handwriting will be perfect, when in reality, we know it isn't. But it means a lot of different things to different people. So you can't get something that's straight off the bat and off the shelf that is trying to solve a lot of different solutions for a lot of different people's, implement it inside your agency and expect it to be the perfect solution. That's just not going to work. The reason why I can confidently say that internal platforms or custom internal platforms, sorry, are the perfect solution when it comes to agency software is because they're fully custom. So they really allow you as an agency owner to build what you need for your own agency from scratch. The best way to kind of explain this is using an example of a tailored suit versus something you get off the shelf. If you buy something off the shelf, like I said, they're trying to solve a lot of different problems for different people in terms of the shoulder width, the bicep size, the material, different things like that. But if you go ahead and actually go and get your own tailored suit made, it's a completely different experience, from the fit, the material, I mean, even the stitch in the pockets, everything is really custom made around your specific preferences. So it makes it the perfect solution for you. But once again, if someone else was to take your tailored suit, then it wouldn't be the perfect solution for them because it's not made for their specific preferences. So that's a bit of a tangent, but that's kind of why we use custom internal apps. In this example, I'm not going to be building something from scratch, but I will be using NoLoco, which is just a no-code builder to actually show you an example of these custom internal apps. I have about 4 hours of different tutorials on how to actually build these custom internal apps on the channel. So feel free to check those out. Once again, I'll link them in the description and I'll put one of them in the top right hand corner. But the key thing I want to show you here is how we're actually going to be using this. So within our custom internal app, we're going to have 3 different user roles and it's split into 2 main sections. The internal section, which is basically anyone that's within the actual agency, and the external section, which is people that are outside of the agency. Now, in terms of the external section, we might as well start off there because there's only one role. In 9 out of 10 cases, the only external people they're going to have within your software are clients. Now, the reason this is really cool because we can actually leverage this to create client portals. Now, I don't recommend client portals for every single niche, but when it comes to content where you actually, in most cases, you actually need your client to upload different raw content into some sort of platform. And this is where client portals come in very, very handy because you can assign different tasks, show your clients what you're working on and different things like that. The second role, which are going to be internal roles, is going to be an admin role. Now, admin is going to be able to view all the different data from all the different clients and all the different employees, as well as different tasks and projects. And then we have the editor role, where he's only going to be able to view his assigned data, the specific tasks and projects he's working on. Now, the easiest way to kind of show you this is just to show you an example. This is something that we built in a previous case study. And what I'll do, I'll kind of open up the platform, go through the different roles, and I'll show you an example of what it actually looks like in action. Now, once again, I don't expect you to build this from scratch, and I'm not going to be building anything out in this video because this is more so of a concept video, kind of taking you through the frameworks I would use to actually automate your content agency. But please check out the videos in the description for more examples of how you can actually set this up for yourself. So the first kind of role we have, if we go over to the user roles, is the team admin role. You can see as a team admin, if I go to projects, I can see every single project within the company, and I can see every single task within the company, which if I go to internal task, which if I click on any of these tasks, I can see more information, such as the assigned employee, for example. However, if I go ahead now and switch over from executive view to an editor view, you can see if I go to my projects, I can only see the projects that have actually been assigned to me. Same exact thing for the tasks. I can only see the tasks that have actually been assigned to me. This is obviously just an example, but it's a great way to kind of leverage a really good secure project management system and avoid confusing your editors, because let's say you have 5 different editors all working for 20 different clients. You don't want them to be able to see all the different work from the different editors, firstly from a security standpoint, but also just to avoid confusing them. This is kind of a clear-cut way. Now, I don't have an example of a client portal just yet because I'm recording that video next week. However, if you were to have a client portal, it would be a very similar process where the client would only see his specific project and they only see the tasks that are kind of related to that specific project. Within that, you can also assign different tasks, and I can show what I showed you here to give you a much better insight on how to actually do that. Now, if you want a much more detailed guide on how to actually create your custom internal platform, we recently just released this free course within our school community, which we call the Skill Proof Roadmap. There, we've got about 39 different modules going over exactly how to set a scale-proof system for your agency. And one of the big things that we cover in that course is how to create an internal platform from scratch. So if you want to check that out, use the first link in the description to join our community and you'll get free access when you actually get inside. Cool, guys. Well, listen, so far we've covered the audit side of things and the internal platform. Now it's time to move on to the anticipated moment where we actually cover the automation. Now, the way we're actually going to be doing this is we're going to be splitting the automation stage in 3 different things. Firstly, we need to figure out what we actually need to automate. Then we need to go ahead and actually plan those automations. And then we're going to go ahead and actually build the automations. Now, once again, as I go through these different processes, you'll get a better understanding of why I'm actually splitting it out in these different stages and the reason why we spend so much time preparing rather than just going straight into the building side of things, which once again, you should do if you're building very simple automations. But because we're talking about automating an entire content agency, this is a bit more complicated. So I want to make sure we spend the time to setting up the right kind of framework. So when we actually move on to building automations, it's very, very easy for us. And it's not something that we have to touch up every couple of weeks to make sure it's working properly. So we'll start off with what? Now, here I basically want to figure out what we actually need to automate. Now, all the work we've done so far in that audit stage will come in very, very handy here. And if you've done it properly, it will make your life a lot easier. The way I see it, there's kind of 2 main groups of automation. There's the $10 an hour automation, and then there's the $100 hour automation. Now, as you can imagine, the $10 hour automation are things that basically can replace by a $10 hour VA, and the $100 an hour automation are things that can be replaced by an actual employee. Now, the way I kind of encourage people to basically get started off is to focus on those $10 an hour automations. Now, well, I'm going to give you some examples of these $100 hour automations, but as you can imagine, these are much more complex to actually set up. And the main thing I'm trying to give you here is ability to kind of pick that low hanging fruit, which are easy to set up and will provide real kind of results in terms of the benefits you're actually getting from setting up these automations. Now, in order to do that, we're going to focus on the $10 on our automations first. Like I said, don't worry, I'm going to give you a bunch of different examples of complex automations as well that you can implement within your content agency. In order to actually find that low hanging fruit, you want to go through your audit that you did in stage 1, and you want to ask yourself these 3 different questions. Firstly, is the task repetitive? Secondly, you want to ask yourself, how much time does it actually take for you to complete this task? And thirdly, you want to ask yourself how often this actually happens. Now, the reason you're kind of going through these different steps is because tasks that are very, very repetitive in the nature of how you do them. So, for example, every single time you do them, it's the exact same process. You'll be able to get much greater gain from actually automating them. Tasks that take a lot of time to actually do, once again, you'll get much better gain from actually automating them. And tasks that happen on a regular basis, you'll get much better gain from actually automating them. So you want to go through all the different steps that you kind of outlined in an audit in the first stage and basically kind of highlight all the different tasks which are similar every single time you do them, take a lot of time to do, and happen often. Every single task that kind of falls in the criteria, highlight, because that's actually what we're going to start off with automating. Now, once you kind of have an idea of what you actually need to automate, then we can move on to actually planning our automations. Now, this is going to be very, very similar to what we did in the audit stage, where we're basically breaking a task or a more complicated process down to its core individual steps to make it easier for us to understand, but also make it easier for us to automate. So for example, rather than saying something like onboarding, you say something like, I'm going to make sure the payment is confirmed. I'm going to send them an onboarding email. I'm going to create a Google Drive folder. I'm going to create another Google Drive folder with all the different resources. I'm going to add them to the Slack channel. I'm going to update the CRM. I'm going to add something in my project management tool. You get the idea. The key thing here is for anything you're doing, you want to break it down to its individual steps, because when we actually go ahead and build automation to the next stage, this will make your life easier. This is also kind of a secondary chance to make sure that you did this audit properly, because if you're missing any steps, then this is when it's going to become very, very clear and you can quickly go ahead and fix it rather than fixing it while you're kind of building an automation, sidetracking you, which will in turn lead to automation being a bit messy, which we don't want. Once you've actually done this for one of the tasks, you probably guessed it, you want to go ahead and repeat this for every single one of the tasks that you've actually identified in your audit and a second ago, which are similar, happen often, and take a lot of time to actually do. Now, once that's all done, you'll get something that looks a bit like this. Now, once again, this is an example for something you did for a client. You don't have to go in this much detail, but I'd want you to at least identify 20 different tasks you can actually automate within your content agency. And I'll give you some examples in a second of some actual automations, once again, to make your life a bit easier. But now we can move on to the last stage, which is actually building the automation. By the way, guys, if you haven't noticed, this is a bit of a different content style to what I usually do compared to kind of pre-billboard. I had someone basically ask me if I could show my sort of thought process as I'm going through a specific framework like this. So I thought, let me try it using a whiteboard. Initially, I was going to use that massive whiteboard right there. However, I need to get a new mic because this mic is a close range mic. I don't know the specific term, but the closer I am to the mic, the better the audio quality is. So if I step all the way back there, even if I brought it closer, then it wouldn't really work out. So if you like these kind of whiteboard videos when I'm interacting with you and kind of show my thought process as I'm actually developing some sort of system, then let me know. I can record more of them in the future. I think this is the individual section everyone's actually been waiting for. We might as well get straight into it. Now, I'll make something very, very clear. I have no intention of actually showing you how to build out different automations. There's 1,000 different automation tutorials out there you can literally copy and paste. On my channel, I think I have about 40 now automation tutorials. In a short time, we've actually been producing content. You can have automations like this, which automatically qualifies appointments, automations like this, which creates AI-powered lead magnets, automations like this, which automatically collect feedback and creates an action plan on how to improve that client's experience, automations like these, which automatically create lead magnets, or even automations like these that whenever a button is pressed within an internal platform, it finds that projects, update the projects, and then create a task to actually check up on the client, as well as sending a message in Slack to the relevant closer. But I'm not going to be showing you how to build any of these automations because I already have tutorials on my channel. What I'll be doing instead is kind of walking through the 3 different stages: sales, onboarding, and fulfillment, and giving you different examples of automations that you can actually implement. Once again, kind of every single content agency that's watching right now will have different processes, which is why I spend so much time going over the audit stage first, because automations you're going to be build aren't going to be based on what I'm telling you now. You can get some inspiration from there, but the main automation you need to build is going to be based on the automation that I identified, which are tasks that are similar, happen often, and actually take a lot of time to do. That is what I like to call the low hanging fruit, which you can easily just start to automate within your agency. So we'll start off with sales. I'll give you 4 different examples of some different sales tasks, and I won't write it down. I'll just say it here to make it life a bit easier. So the first one is automatically qualifying your leads. This is something I don't see agencies doing enough, and it's very simple automation to set up. You basically want to use the Calendly questions or whatever kind of your booking software, and if they don't fit a certain criteria, you want to basically go ahead and cancel that meeting to keep your calendar free for your closers. Make sure you're not talking to any unqualified prospects. Now, only do this if you have a lot of calls coming in and you're noticing your calendar is getting full. Don't do this if you're a beginner, because you just be denying business for no reason. It's better you get those reps in anyways. Another example of automation you can set up for your sales process is AI-powered lead magnets. And this is something I talk about so much. It's such a powerful tool because you can literally show your specific leads how your specific services can benefit them based on the lead's specific situation. Also, I'd automate some sort of warm-up sequence. Now, this isn't too much related to automation. It's been around for a long time. It's basically as soon as someone signs up, you send them a sequence of emails or even YouTube videos if you have a YouTube channel like ourselves, which basically try to warm up the lead on your specific offer and what you actually do. Google did a study which shows that for a person to actually trust you, they have to consume about 7 hours of content. So you want to make sure you get those 7 hours of content in before the sales call, in some sort of warm-up sequence. In terms of onboarding, we have so many videos going over onboarding. I'll put one of them right here. We literally build out automation from scratch that you can just copy and paste in your agency. The main thing with onboarding, right, is you want to get rid of any delays. So the way I see it, it's kind of 3 main stages to onboarding. There's what happens immediately. So as soon as the payment comes in, for example, there's what happens within the first 24 hours, and then there's what happens within the first 7 days. Each one of those kind of 3 different categories are split in its own individual levels. You need to make sure you really pinpoint your onboarding process and get a really good understanding of exactly what should happen at each stage. Onboarding is that first introduction you actually get to speak to your clients, And it's literally the first impression I actually get of you. So if you have a really streamlined onboarding process without any delays, where you're getting them value as soon as possible, then I promise you it'll have a positive impact on your churn if you're able to provide them good results. So within onboarding, you can automate different things like creating folders, welcome tasks for your employees, creating a personal brand audit using AI, creating different projects, or even creating different contracts. I don't know. There's a bunch of different things you can do depending on your specific onboarding process. If you're a beginner, I'd focus on automating exactly what happens immediately after the payment comes in, and the rest of the stuff, which is a bit more complicated, like 24 hours after the payment or even 7 days from the payment, then you can focus on that manually. And also, we have fulfillment. Now, when it comes to fulfillment, even though you're not kind of producing the same exact sort of service for each different type of customer, the likelihood is that you're attracting a very particular type of customer, that those specific avatars have specific problems that they go through as they go through your fulfillment process. So once again, even if you're doing done for you services when it comes to content creation, for editing, for example, obviously the editing of it is actually different, but the actual kind of process they go through in terms of sending you the content, sending it to your editor editing, and then sending it back to you. You send it to the client getting approval, then you posting it. It's going to follow a very, very similar flow, which is why the audit within a stage one is very powerful, because it'll give you the insights on how you can actually automate a process like done for you fulfillment. Now, a couple of examples of some fulfillment automations could be automating the content approval process. Now, this is something that you have to do within your internal platform I showed you over here. But within that, for example, you could have a button that the client can actually press to actually approve the content rather than having to send you a message, wait for a response, and then go ahead and post the content. You want to basically get rid of any delays within the fulfillment process. Another example could be an auto script writer. Now, obviously, it applies if you're actually creating scripts for your clients. You could create some sort of AI system which automatically creates the scripts for your clients. And obviously, just to be very clear, each client would have their own assistant based on a specific brand and different things like that. You could also automate the content posting. Now, there's a bunch of software that do this, but you could easily integrate your kind of backend systems like the internal platform to those software to automatically post the content. I have a massive thing for content agencies specifically will be feedback collection. As you're kind of putting out different content, it's important that for each piece of content you actually release, you gather feedback from your client to make sure you're giving them the best possible experience. So what I'll do, I'll set up automation that whenever a content piece is posted, it sends them a message within Slack or whatever kind of platform you're using to communicate to basically gather feedback from a specific content and then automatically assign it to the next task for the editor so they know what to improve on when they actually create the next clip. Those are just different examples of different ways you can actually automate your content agency. Now, to be honest, I'm glad I didn't use this pen to write down because as you can tell, my handwriting is not the best and I take a lot of time to actually write stuff down. But I hope that gives you a rough idea of different things you can automate. But honestly, guys, don't use that as the things you need to automate, because the things you need to automate are the things that we identified here and we identified all the way back in your audit in stage one. So rather than kind of listening to me for different examples, I've basically given you the tools that you can use to find the own examples based on your specific circumstances. And I'll be 10 times more valuable than listening to a random guy in an orange hoodie. Guys, that's pretty much it from me. If you did like this content and you found this valuable, make sure to like, subscribe. We release so much content like this going over automations, internal platforms, KPIs, just different tools that you need to set up scale-proof operations for your agency. So if you want to see more content like this, like, subscribe, and YouTube will put more of this on your feed. Secondly, guys, I kind of hinted it halfway through the video. We just recently launched our Scale-Proof Agency Hub. This is obviously an outdated screenshot. I think at the moment we have about 100 different people in there. And within there, we have this amazing course, which is called the Scale-Proof Roadmap. Now, within that course, I basically go step by step on how you can actually set up scale-proof systems. So not just automation, but an entire scale-proof systems that you can literally just copy and paste in your agency. To get access to that, it's 100% free. All you have to do is join using the first link in the description, and then you can kind of go through the steps to get access to the actual course. We have about 474 examples and about 1,247 minutes of content within the actual course, so it's extremely valuable. You'll also get access to this mind map if you want, and all the other different resources within our YouTube channel. So if any of that sounded interesting and you want to actually be in a community with established agency owners who are actually looking to set up scale-proof systems, then this is the place to be. So you can join that using the first link in the description. And lastly, guys, don't finish your learning here. I recommend you check out this video right here, showing an example of an automation which is built from scratch, showing you exactly how you can automate your onboarding process using make.com. This is an example of what should happen immediately as soon as a client gets signed on. So if you want some more inspiration on how to actually automate that, check out the video that's going to pop up at the end of this video to give you a better view on how to actually do that. But apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. It's been a pleasure actually recording this. Let me know what you guys think of the new kind of format I'm kind of sending out. And, if you have any questions in the comments or within the community. And that's it from me. I'll catch you next one. Bye-bye.